podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Harry Sethi. With Reds making progress in both domestic cups, with a thrilling 2-0 win over Arsenal at the Emirates in the FA Cup and a first leg comeback against Fulham in the EFL Cup semi-final, it's been a while since our attention focused on the Premier League. Liverpool's last outing in the league saw them batter Newcastle 4-2 on New Year's Day, solidifying their position as league leaders. But by the time they next play, their rivals may be closing in on that top spot or may have even taken it themselves. But Klopp & Co. will be grateful for this mid-season break after an intense winter period and a rising list of absentees from the squad. On this week's pod, we'll be looking ahead to the Reds' return to the Premier League action as they travel to Bournemouth on Sunday for what's sure to be a testing game against the in-form Cherries side. Joining me on the pod to discuss Bournemouth's progress under Iraeola, how far it can go this season, and whether Dom Solanke is set for a big money move away from the seaside, I'm delighted to welcome back Craig from the Up the Cherries in All Departments YouTube channel. Welcome back, Craig. Good to speak with you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Harry. Pleasure as always.
I was just trying to think back to when the game against Bournemouth was. Obviously, we played each other twice this season. Once in, I'd say, biblical weather, based upon what I could see of the game in the cup, but truly was. But also cut my mind back to the game at Anfield earlier in the season, and prior to that, we had our chat about the direction the club was going in, the new ownership, the new manager. You spoke actually quite positively about the methods that you were hoping to see the manager implement across the team. I think on the day, the interesting game, an eventful one. Love to ask you of your memories of it. I'd completely forgotten that there was that Alexis McAllister red card that was obviously later rescinded. But just casting your mind back to that now, I mean, what were your memories of that game and sort of how Bournemouth competed on that day?
I think, in the initial stage of the season, what we started off, of course, we got the draw against West Ham. And I remember, I think it was the 19th of August, if I'm right, because I was going to Abu Dhabi the following day. Or no, it was later on that day. So personally, I thought we started very strongly. Of course, Semenyo got that goal. And there was the red card, the McAllister red card. Could we have done a little bit more? We could have possibly put a little bit more pressure on Liverpool. But it was all to see. And I liked the methods that Iraeola was showing at that stage. Of course, we'll go on probably to later on in the season because there's been it's a bit like a boomerang season. It started off really, really positively. I was a big Gary O'Neill fan, and the reason being is what he's shown at Wolves. He makes the difficult things quite simple. It's not the best style of football, and Iraeola's style of football is a lot better, more attractive. But he gets the job done. And I was excited. There was names bounded about like Jesse Marsh, who, again, I'll come on to because I did make a video a little while back. So I'll come on to that. But also, there was Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard mentioned. No offence to Steven Gerrard, great player, but not really particularly hit the ground running as manager. And personally, I was delighted when Andoni Iraeola because, of course, Rayo Vallecano, he's done a very good job with a team which are probably a similar size to Luton Town, probably a similar size to ourselves, really. from where we've come from, and he's made them a real force. Of course, there was wins against Barcelona, wins against Real Madrid, and I was very excited. And so it showed early in the season, with the draw against West Ham, draw against Chelsea. The performance at Liverpool wasn't bad. I think, and I'm no doubt you probably want to ask me about when it went a little bit pear-shaped, because we didn't get our first win until the Burnley game, which was, some 3 months later. So if you want me to go on to that, I'll explain, what happened after that game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an interesting one. I remember the lingering memory I have of our chat earlier in the season was you describing those methods that Iraeola had obviously implemented at Rayo Vallecano, and your hopes for those methods. And obviously, I think some of those are challenging to implement quickly. It takes time to sort of bed in some of those changes. And I suppose the early season sort of turbulence was somewhat to be expected. It's easy for us to say it now, and we'll come on to talk about sort of the, with the benefit of hindsight, how things have gone, much improved form, actually very impressive run that the club's been on. But describe sort of the turbulence that Bournemouth encountered early on in the season, and what you think the main reasons were behind some of those results.
I think, it led up. See, I was impressed with him right up until the Brighton game. And there was a little bit of a turn around that point. Now, the Brighton game, of course, we went 1-0 up in. We conceded a very, very sloppy goal. Some confusion between Neto, I think it was Kirkes at the back. So that was a mistake that really you wouldn't expect Neto to be making. Neto, I'll again come on to him, has made, some vital saves, but he is prone to a number of errors. And then in the second half, and how you do this, I don't know, Harry, but from kickoff, our own kickoff, we conceded after 16 seconds through Matoma. And it just seemed that the confidence was devoid of the team after that. Arsenal come to town, and, I was fairly positive because I thought, well, the Brighton game might be a one-off. Again, in the Brighton game, we played what you would say is attractive football for 45 minutes. And we were just destroyed against Arsenal. To be honest, it could have been a lot more. But for spells of that game, we did play, again, very, very attractive football. The Everton game was the big one for me, though. And I started to have doubts because I thought, well, Iraeola, should be picking up points. He should be getting, 3 points against Everton, because Everton were in a horrible run of form at that time. And of course, they've picked up themselves. And they played us off the park. And it wasn't because Everton was good. It was because we were terrible. At that point, I did start to think and did start to make assumption. Is this really for Iraeola? You can play sexy football as much as you want. But if sexy football is going to get you relegated, then you might as well go back to something that is a little bit more ugly. What we had under Gary O'Neill.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, You can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
Really, though, and of course there was the Wolves game as well, that was straight after Everton, and again that was very, very poor. A Neto mistake again, combined with Phil Billing, literally passed out the back. I did turn around at this time and said, "Look, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked." The Iraeola experiment. I thought, and I looked at it and I made a video. And to be honest, this video went quite viral because of what I said. But I looked at the situation. I thought, right, who is available? And the person who I thought, because of course we've got Tyler Adams, we've got Sinistera, we do have some links, as much as our fans don't like it, there is links with Leeds there. And I thought Jesse Marsh, as a temporary measure, not as a permanent, but a temporary measure, might actually be quite a sensible appointment just to get some wins on the board. Because Jesse Marsh, as much as people have knocked him in the past, and of course, was he culpable for Leeds' relegation? You could say in part he was, but he was also in part in them performing what you would say is a great escape. And I thought he might get us some wins on the board. He might be something whilst we work out what the next step is. That shows why I'm not actually a football club owner. And I think there was serious thoughts over it at the football club, because for the Burnley game, Bill Foley was in the stadium, and it seemed and it felt like it was Iraeola's last chance. Now, Iraeola is a man, is a lovely, lovely guy, so down to earth, such a pleasant person. But results matter on a football pitch, and we weren't getting them at that point. And it was as if things had turned that day. It wasn't a great game. Burnley could have got an equaliser. There was that 7 minutes through VAR that went on as well. And we thought, well, it might be a bit lucky, but let's see, how it all pans out. We had the Man City defeat, the 6-1 defeat, and then everything just all come together. Beating Sheffield United 3-0, beating Manchester United away from home 3-0, drawing against Aston Villa. I'm not putting all these games in order, but it's been a phenomenal run that we've been on. When you think about it, we were, apart from, the bottom two, which Burnley and Sheffield United, we were down there and we were probably quite adrift of them. If we had kept up that form, we would have no doubt had an absolute mountain to climb this year. But that run that we've been on, it's all come together. And I tell you why it has come together.
Yeah.
Is Iraeola plays very pressing football. Pressing from the front, putting the defence under pressure straight from attack. Now, in the Premier League, when you've got somebody, against Arsenal, Arsenal have got a lot more money to burn and they can play that way. And they coped with that absolutely fine. Arsenal did. And then you've got the spin side, Everton, a side that really we felt that we should have beaten on paper. And to be honest, if it was Gary O'Neill playing and his side playing in that style, we would have beaten them that day, because Everton weren't very good. I've got to be honest. Everton were not very good. But it was the pass. We weren't doing much with it. What Iraeola started to do from that Burnley game is go a lot more direct. Semenyo, Kluivert, those two players in particular really, really started to peak for us. Marcus Tavernier, another player. Adam Smith has basically rolled back the years at right back. And to be fair, I think Max Aarons has got a real job on his hand to actually get back into the side, because I think that Adam Smith has been absolutely fantastic. Zabania has come on leaps and bounds and is showing the actual promise that, we all knew he had. And of course, we can't forget that man, Dom Solanke up front. In fact, I was invited on to TalkSport this week
Mm.
and to speak to Majestic and Alan Pardew. And their question was, is Dominic Solanke, worth the 60 million that Arsenal were meant to be going after him for? And my answer was yes, he's worth probably a lot more, because what he brings other players into it, drops back. What we've done, to kind of sum it up, Harry, is
Yeah.
we're playing that Iraeola style of football, but with a little bit more direct intent. So a little bit like Eddie Howe used to, where you play out from the back, get the ball up quickly. Whereas before, it was a lot more passing, looking for room. It was beautiful. It was beautiful to watch. And to be honest, it still is, even though we've changed it up a little bit. But I think personally, he is it's getting the results, and that's probably the best way I can explain it. It's a bit like the Eddie Howe directness, but with that Iraeola style of play. It's really, really attractive to watch, and
Mm.
it's getting us the results.
Absolutely, yeah, I think, and that's what managers live and die by, isn't it? As you said, you can be the nicest character in the world off the pitch, like you have all the players on side, but if you're not winning games, ultimately you're going to be judged by that. And
Yeah.
interesting, as you mentioned, that Burnley game, that it was a win, but a narrow win, and followed up by a defeat to Liverpool, which I thought again was a much more competitive game, as I talked about in the biblical weather. And then, yeah, as you said, the 6-1 loss to Man City can happen to many teams as well. So not really worth paying too much attention to that. I wanted to ask you, I will do in a second, actually, a little bit about probably your favourite result of the season. I have to say, very much enjoyed the 3-0 defeat of Manchester United at Old Trafford, and comprehensive as well. I have to say, really comprehensive performance that by Bournemouth, like historic result, I think, as well. And we'll definitely come on to talk to you about that. Interesting what you're talking about with Solanke as well, because I think many people who are listening to this pod will try and cast their minds back to Solanke's time at Liverpool, and he got a decent shot in terms of some sort of like cameo performances, off and off the bench, to be honest. And I'd say that the main things I thought about Dominic Solanke when he was at Liverpool was that he was a player who applied himself. You could tell that there was a real attention to what the manager had asked him to do, the tactical work, the system work that would help others, bring others into play. But what we felt was lacking really was that real striker's instinct, or maybe top quality striker's instinct, to actually get goals in the Premier League. And obviously what we've seen since is after he moved on from Liverpool is seasons in the league, in the Championship, where he's scored those goals, got those numbers against his name again. The confidence seems to have come back. It came back up, and again, you were questioning, okay, do you have it here? Can you do it in this league? And I have to say, I've been very, very pleased to see for the guy that he is enjoying himself. He's playing with confidence. He's not just a hard-working system player who can bring others into play. He's getting some goals, and some quite stylish ones as well, and goals that actually illustrate that maybe that striker's instinct, or what's necessary to score goals at the top level, it's come with age, it's come with games. Interesting to hear what you said there. You having that chat with the guys and Alan Pardew on TalkSport. I mean, these rumours around what you're saying, there's a suggestion that Arsenal are sniffing around a £60 million bid for Dominic Solanke. Obviously, we know that they're desperate for a gunman up front, as I've heard some of their strikers, some of their fans describe him.
Yeah, they're not the only ones either. West Ham have been mentioned. Tottenham have been mentioned. So there's a lot of people, a lot of suitors for Dominic Solanke. I think he's worth a lot more than 60 million. And the reason being is he's not your out and out goal scorer. He's not a poacher. what you would say.
No, exactly. Yeah.
He's not going to sit there and, wait for the ball to come into his feet and put in the back of the net. What he'll do is he'll drop back and he'll make things happen for somebody like Philip Billen, somebody, like Justin Kluivert, Ryan Christie, who are another player who has really stepped up, who I thought is the Premier League going to really be that, it's going to probably be a little bit of a push for him. But again, he stepped up. And in fact, he's playing some of the best football he has under Iraeola. So Dominic Solanke does so much more than just your poacher. If you was to ask me, though, what I would want in this January window, because there has been talk of a Ecuadorian player who is meant to be joining the club from LDU Quito. So that's really promising. Young midfielder. Somebody exciting. Feels like a bit of a Brighton transfer, to be honest, Harry.
Whenever there's a young talent from South America now, I think whenever I see a Brighton transfer link, I think there was one earlier today. I was like, is it possible to hijack that move at the last minute?
Well, hopefully there's not going to be any Brighton
no
owners or people in the boardroom listening to this, because no doubt this player is a player, of course, that we've supposedly beaten Manchester United to. But going back to Dominic Solanke, I think his time at the club is probably limited, because somebody will pay the asking price that I think Bill Foley's got in his head, but it won't be this window. But still, just going back to what I was saying before, if there's one position that I want a player in, during this January window, it's got to be somebody up front. And I would actually say somebody who is a bit of a poacher, because that might actually, take the pressure off Dominic Solanke, and plus, if he gets injured, who else have we got? I know Tara can play up there, so he hasn't for us, but he can. Kiefer Moore, of course. The problem with Kiefer Moore is he's a good target man. He's a good man to, ping balls into the box, and he'll get his head on them. And he's very good at that. The problem is that's all well and good. The perfect side for Kiefer Moore, in all due respects, is Everton, because they will throw balls into that box and then try and get his head on them. So if he wanted anywhere to go to, that's probably the club for him. But the way we play probably doesn't suit Kiefer Moore's style. We need somebody who's quick, somebody who is a bit of a poacher, where Dominic Solanke can maybe feed them, another outlet. Somebody who, of course, will be there in the box, causing hassle. So that's what we really need.
Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Dominic Solanke is, though, an outstanding player. And regardless of who comes in, You know, he is, probably the first name on the team sheet at this moment in time because he is so comfortable in doing what he does. I don't think there's been a poor game from him this season, even when we were struggling. Dominic Solanke was still doing the legwork, still trying to make things happen. And yeah, he's worth a lot more than 60 million. And if Arsenal think that they can get him this window for that figure, I think they can think again.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I'm sure the listeners will have their own views on Dominic Solanke, a 60 million pound Dominic Solanke. It's really remarkable to see sort of how his stock has risen once again. And I want to talk about the results. You talked about that maybe it was in terms of the changes that have allowed these positive results to come Bournemouth's way. Maybe it was a move away from a more possession-based build-up from the back to okay, let's be a bit more vertical, quicker. Let's be direct, and we see that from Liverpool at times as well. I mean, like get compressed with the best of them and relearning it, sort of to get to their pressing best. I'd say still getting back to that with the new midfielders that have been bedding in, but plenty of times as well. If it's you can build up from the back, but if you can go direct, especially with the likes of Trent, Alexander-Arnold, to play those balls and others, it's can be very effective as you've seen with Bournemouth. And I wanted to talk about what have been the results for you that you look at. I mean, I spoke about maybe the obvious one at Old Trafford, but what have been the results for you or performances of the season so far, and or games where you think that really symbolises the progress that Bournemouth have made? Is it hard to look past Old Trafford?
I think there's probably a couple. So of course,
Thing is, you would have played better sides than United, to be honest. I will say that, and that's maybe bias coming from me, but I think you have done.
And the Man United game, it's a remarkable when you go up to Old Trafford, and 74,000 people in that stadium, considering the size of club that we are, and go and beat them there, quite convincingly as well. And, I really hated during the aftermath of that game that everybody was saying, Man United are rubbish, Man United are poor. When in fact, it was a Bournemouth were brilliant. We were
Yeah,
outstanding that game.
I think two things can be true as well. I mean, I thought Bournemouth were fantastic, and
Yeah.
actually, if I'm not remembering wrong, there was a goal ruled out in that game as well. It could have been 4-0 if I remember correctly. And
We hit the bar. To be honest,
and you hit the bar exactly. So I mean,
yeah, I think
they are a
5-0.
poor side though. They are
Oh,
a poor
yeah,
side.
very poor. When you look at what they've done since, of course, Forest beat them as well recently.
Mm,
They're not the Man United of old, but the games that I would say, Fulham on Boxing Day was a very good, performance, dominant performance from the side. When and Crystal Palace away was another big one. We don't tend to ever get anything from Crystal Palace. I don't know why. They're a bit of a bogey side for us. But again, we didn't really get out of second gear that game. And we still beat Crystal Palace. And it felt like we were doing the right things to get the result, even if we weren't playing at our full pelt. But the game for me, and what might surprise you here, Harry, is it wasn't a win, was the draw against Aston Villa. Aston Villa
sure.
lucky to come away with a point. And that game really symbolised everything AFC Bournemouth are about. We were quick, we were strong, we were winning the balls. There was a lot of competing for possession, good tackles. And we were much the better side in that game against the Villa side, who, let's be honest, a week later played Man City off the park. And they really did. I watched that game actually. And, they really did play Man City off the park. They were much the better side, and really we should have won. We should have won that game against Aston Villa. So that has to be the game for me, even though it's not 3 points. It shows the progress, and I think Villa, personally, hand on heart, are one of the best sides that we've come up against this season, and we really did push them all the way to the point where we should have won the game.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you, Aston Villa. I mean, I think they didn't perform actually very well. Well, actually, I think Liverpool performed very well at Anfield against them early in the season. But I have to say, delighted not to have to think about an Aston Villa away game until much later in the season. Hopefully, when they've already achieved what they wanted to achieve and are somewhat on a beach somewhere, because it's clearly a very difficult place to go. They're a side that organises themselves well, and they've got a manager who I think. One thing you can definitely say about him is the preparation, the level of detail that he brings to his sides, and the way in which you can see there's a clear plan to try and exploit the opposition's weaknesses. I think, to get a result against that side at the moment is clearly a really impressive feat, even if it's not a win. And as you say, it was very close to being a win anyway. And you talked about the progress, talked about sort of maybe some of the areas that you'd like to see the side strengthen in. And you did touch upon there a little bit. Obviously, we spoke about Solanke, but Kluivert's having a great season as well. Are there players in the Bournemouth squad who you mentioned sort of a second, a renaissance for some of them? Are there players that you've been surprised to see thrive under Iraeola, or who have come in from the cold and are now sort of key to what he's been able to do?
I think one of the players, and he hasn't got age on his side, but he's been outstanding, since he's come into the side this season, is Adam Smith. Now, I've casting my mind back to the Brighton home game last season. We was beaten 2-0, and Adam Smith played that game, and he just seemed leggy, he seemed slow, he seemed like he was struggling a little bit, and I walked out of that stadium thinking, right, Adam Smith's best days are behind him. And it's a real shame. It's a real shame. But players do, find that point where they can't compete at the highest level. And that's what's come for Adam Smith. However, what Iraeola's done with him has given him a whole new lease of life. And that's what's quite exciting. That's what makes a good manager, is turning players who are, maybe coming to the end of their career or struggling, with form, or players that are maybe just average, like Eddie Howe did when he brought in Simon Francis, Steve Cook, Tommy Elphick, all these names who weren't really, well, to be honest, in the case of Cook, it was actually Lee Bradbury who brought him in. And all of these players, he effectively made them better players. And this is what Iraeola is doing with some of these players now. There's Adam Smith giving him a lease of life. He still, has he got the pace? No, but he's sometimes a little bit deeper, and it works. It works. Semenyo, I think, is an outstanding player under him. Now, if you ask Bristol City fans of their opinion of Anton Semenyo, what they would say is he's a player that blows hot and cold, and a player who one day can be unplayable, next day really struggles. We haven't found that under Iraeola, and he's been consistently good, consistently quality. And he's come on leaps and bounds. I think probably the only player that I could say has struggled a little bit so far this season at times is the goalkeeper, Neto. I think some of his decision making has been a little bit poor. Especially in that Wolves game, the Brighton game, of course the Spurs game as well. There's been some real howlers this season from him. But, he does pull off some really good saves as well. So to answer your point, I think he's improved the squad as a whole, improved the way that players are thinking about the game. I think one thing that probably does help is Iraeola. At the start of the season, I don't know how many people are aware of this. He didn't have his number 2 available to him. Now he's got his number 2. That's probably taken quite a lot of pressure off, and it's probably meant that he's been able to focus on, how these players actually implement his tactics and implement that style that was so successful at Rayo Vallecano. And I thought, during that rough period, I thought, well, the Rayo Vallecano players are, must be pretty good. He's hit gold. He's hit it lucky. Unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't follow him, follow managers. And, if you look at his time at Larnaca, that particularly wasn't that successful. But I think, he's shown everybody what he's about, and it's just improved the quality of the team overall.
And so I suppose that brings us on to the game against Liverpool. Again, different prospect, Liverpool having to travel to Bournemouth for this game, and comes at a time where there will be, I think it's the news today, obviously, that Trent Alexander-Arnold hyperextended his knee against Arsenal, so will be away for 3 weeks is what I'm hoping for. It could easily be longer than that. He joins a list of a number of players, those who are out injured, but also those who are away for AFCON and for the Asian Cup as well. I think it's like 10 players at the moment who are unavailable for selection for Liverpool. And that's actually quite a few of them actually first teamers or in that first team rotation as well. So it's going to be a changed Liverpool side, probably a side with, well, no recognized senior fullbacks as well, which again, not crying on here. Very aware of Liverpool's sort of like spoils and the number of options they've got to choose from, but yeah, definitely a number of players out. I can see a number of players out for Bournemouth, or a number of players also unavailable for Bournemouth for this game as well. But I'm interested. The two sides meet in a very different place. Liverpool, pretty much flying at this point as on top of the league, whilst having not necessarily played their greatest football, but having had a really good past few weeks, certainly, and showed the resilience amongst the group. Bournemouth, as you've talked about throughout the podcast, on this great run, despite that recent loss to Tottenham. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, how do you anticipate that Iraeola is going to approach this game? Would there be a change for the likes of Liverpool coming to town, like maybe being conscious of Liverpool's threats they do have on the attacking side, or will there be a confidence in the approach that Bournemouth have taken that has seen them get results in recent months, and they'll just play to their strengths and see where that takes them?
It's a difficult one for me to answer, because I think what we were doing, earlier on in the season was, approaching it with the same style game. I think, the way we approach a game against Fulham or the game, against Crystal Palace is going to be very different to this. But I would not be surprised if we go at slightly more defensive, but with that attacking intent. Maybe we'll play a little bit deeper, but we will have, fingers crossed Kirkes is back. He's a huge loss. He can get forwards quickly. Adam Smith probably, will be there. And he'll sit further back and support the defenders of Zabania and Senesi. But I think we'll probably sit for a little bit deeper, but we'll attack in that same prowess. That worked against Aston Villa, and was a masterstroke for Iraeola. I think even in that Manchester City game, he was still trying things out. and get, making mistakes effectively. But I think he's refined those, especially for that Villa game. Against Spurs, we weren't poor. We weren't poor. To be honest, 3-1, flattered Spurs, to be perfectly honest. And, it should, to be honest, if you'd given us a little bit longer, we could have really got back into that game. So, I think, I think that's probably how he'll play, just a bit deeper, because we know the quality that Liverpool do have going forwards. It will be again a test for Senesi and Zabania against Mo Salah if he plays, which I don't know if he will be actually.
No, he'll be
It won't
away.
be. It's the African Cup of Nations, of course it is. Of course it is. So we're lucky in that sense. But there's still so much quality in that Liverpool side that I think that's probably the approach we'll go with. Just a bit deeper, but still with that attacking intent. Will we press from the front? To be honest, we did it against Manchester United, but then again, Manchester United are a lot poorer side than Liverpool.
That's that's a sentiment that's going to go down very well with a lot of the listeners. Still gutted that we somehow didn't beat them at Anfield. Really remarkable process there to manage to not beat that side at Anfield. But as you talk about, I mean, Salah won't be there, Trent won't be there. There's no Robertson. Van Dijk is back, I believe. Szoboszlai will be out injured. Thiago, the myth, the figment of our imagination that this footballer Thiago Alcantara once played for Liverpool, is obviously still absent. And but as you talked about, clearly there's lots of quality still there. Endo, the Japanese defensive midfielder who's been playing very well, is away at the Asian Cup as well. But I expect Liverpool to try the same approach, but there'll probably be a few children maybe amongst the squad that we've wonderful chance for them naturally. But I did want to ask you actually, because it's been really interesting, as we always ask on these shows, just to get someone's perspective who doesn't watch Liverpool all the time and might catch them here and there, and just to get a objective opinion from the outside. I mean, Liverpool currently find themselves top of the league. I have to say it's probably unexpected for me for them to be where they are at the moment. Aston Villa, of course, having a wonderful season as well. I just wanted to ask you, based on what you've seen of Liverpool this season, has there been anything that's particularly struck you about them, or it doesn't matter if not, but just wanted to get your perspective on if you've seen much of the Reds?
To be honest, Harry, I've seen quite a bit. I expected this to happen after last season. Jurgen Klopp wanted a response, and he's got it. Of course, last season there was moments where Liverpool were fantastic. Of course, that game up at Anfield. To be honest, we probably coupled that we were absolutely terrible that day. I was there for that 9-0 thrashing. But I think I expected it to happen. And it feels like, that you haven't really got into, the full gear. You haven't got into full gear. You're still finding your way. Now, the big problem, and I think this month is the challenge for Liverpool with the injuries, with the African Cup of Nations. I thought for a moment that most was going to be playing, but of course the African Cup of Nations is happening. Of course, Dongo.
Have to say, I am in a strange situation where I have to say I'm really hoping Egypt have a bad run or something like that, because he's been so influential this season. I just want to get him back as soon as possible. But I know given the man's willpower and drive, it's probably going to be the opposite, unfortunately. So he won't be there. And as I was saying as well, Wataru Endo, who's actually really grown in influence in defensive midfield for Liverpool, won't be available either.
Yeah. I personally think this is a month that if you can navigate this month well, Liverpool have every chance.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac, and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, mag boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
The competitors this year, Manchester City are a little bit hit and miss. There's a lot of games that they are playing at the moment. Of course, they say that they're world champions, and rightly so. I think they were very, very good last year in their route to the Champions League. I don't think they're going to win a fourth title, which I think is going to open it up. I think there's going to still be more slip-ups from them, and I think they'll really struggle to actually match anywhere near. I think they're more likely to come closer in the Champions League than, win a Premier League title again this year. In all honesty, they'll still be thereabouts, but I think, they'll probably be trying to focus on winning that Champions League again. I think they'll come up a little bit short. Personally, for me, I think, Liverpool got such a good chance of winning this Premier League. I've got to say, probably the toughest competitors have to be the two North London clubs. Arsenal have gone for a little bit of a blip, but I think Spurs look very strong. They've had their problems earlier on in the season, but as much as it should have been a closer game at their place. Last week, I think, hand on heart, I think they are. I think Postecoglou has got them really playing well, really, really playing well. I think that there's no Harry Kane as well this time around. I think Postecoglou is doing a very, very good job there. I think they're going to be competing. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not because I always get them wrong, I would say I reckon Liverpool probably do this.
Very much endearing yourself to to the rest of it. I think it's. I do think you're right about navigating this month. I think December was important, and we did that. And this month, especially, I forgot as well. Trent is a big loss for whenever he's out the team. I think to be without any sort of senior fullbacks is going to be a weird thing to contend with. Maybe we'll go even more direct than we have been. But it's we're just going to have to get to the end of this month, try and pick up the results. One thing I do have to say about Liverpool is I've seen some mild suggestions, murmurings, mentions of a word I don't want to hear at all this season, which is the quad. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And there's a reason why teams don't win it. And going for something like that tends to destroy your squad because you try and do it and no one has a squad big enough because you want to get your first teamers out there and they get injured. And I hope to God that there's no delusions that we're going to do that, because we tried that a couple of seasons ago. Came very close, I have to admit. But in the end, I think it really does wreck your players' fitness and conditioning. So hopefully that's just online chatter and no one at the club. Well, I'm sure they're all winners, right? But I hope no one's genuinely thinking that's a possibility. There's competitions to prioritize, absolutely. And just one final question, Craig. Given you said the boomerang of a season, the run that the club have been on recently, the possibility of strengthening the squad in the window. Where do you think Bournemouth fans' expectations are? I mean, currently sitting 12th in the league, is it on 25 points, I believe? And just what do you think is the ceiling for the season?
Well, if you had asked me after that Everton game, it would be just to scrape through in 17th. That would be my answer. Scrape through in 17th after that Everton game. Now, personally, if we keep up the form we're playing, put that Spurs defeat to one side. If we pick up the form again that we went into, this run with, and into that Spurs game with, then, I personally think that Europe isn't out the equation. Now, the thing for me is if we do get Europe, what is that going to leave us with? Because we've not got a deep squad. We haven't got strength in depth. We are a side, who, if you take away a couple of our players, we're probably going to be playing youngsters. And I think to have a real chance of competing in the Premier League again, and that's just, matching what we did the season before, and then playing in Europe at the same time, as well as the FA Cup and League Cup and all that. I think you have to have a deep squad. So although it would be amazing to see this football club play in Europe, it might also have a negative spin in the future. I think it could, we've seen teams get into Europe, Harry, and then the following season, when they're playing in Europe, they get relegated. If I'm right in thinking, Ipswich Town, for example, was the big one. This was back in the 2000, I think the year 2000. They finished fifth, really good season. They had that, they went into the UEFA Cup. They did quite well, actually, I believe. If I'm right in thinking, didn't they play Inter Milan and get a result against them? I think they beat them and then got relegated the same season. And that's what we've got to be careful of, because too many games could cause injuries. So I'd like us to push as high as possible. Do I want Europe? It's a double-edged sword. Depends how much money Bill Foley's going to spend in the summer.
Yeah, I think that probably does answer your question there, to sort of how high the ambitions can be, how high the expectations can be. But I think it's a wonderful situation to find yourselves in, where there's none of that apprehension at the moment, obviously, around being involved in a relegation battle. It's focusing on refining the style that Iraeola has brought to the side, and seeing what are the areas where you can strengthen to really sort of double your or sort of emphasize your advantage, really. So I think I'm expecting it to be a tough game, actually. I think it's a game where I wouldn't give for Darwin Núñez to just be ruthless for once. Whether we're going to see that, it will. I mean, he did supply a wonderful finish, obviously, against Bournemouth.
Yes,
last time he turned up, it was I think from memory, wasn't it a horrendous first touch followed by a wonderful finish?
Yeah,
which I think somewhat sums him up. So yeah, if you can do the second bit of that again, that would be great. But yeah, I'm expecting it to be a competitive game, and a real battle for Liverpool. So Craig, I want to thank you again. There's been obviously two conversations we've had so far this season on just the development of this Bournemouth side, and it's really interesting to sort of see how far you can go this season. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
my pleasure. Thank you so much, Harry.
And just to wrap things up here, guys, if you've been listening to these Rival Recon shows, there will be a little bit of a gap now between this one and the next, just because, as I said, the quad, don't mention the quad. Everyone's in these, we're in these EFL Cup and the FA Cup. Never a thing to complain about, but it's a lot of games, and it means there's some space between the Bournemouth game and the next Premier League game, which actually will be Liverpool welcoming Chelsea to Anfield on the 31st of January. So, yeah, do stay tuned for another episode of Rival Recon ahead of that game. But between now and then, check out Anfield Index Pro for a whole host of podcasts. Maybe we'll delve into our current injury situation and just how much in the red we are, and can we navigate this month, as Craig mentioned. So, yeah, do tune in for all those other great podcasts throughout the next month or so.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.